It's pretty frustrating. It's pretty frustrating being me sometimes with my stupidity and all. One of the more frustrating things about life is you can edit just about everything after you start a stream, except you can't change the microphone. Is it okay to say you were worried and were going to text me? Sure. Nothing to worry about. I haven't been feeling especially well. You know, I have this dental problem, which is I have a broken tooth here that has a sharp edge that keeps like scraping my tongue. It's super annoying. Have I been watching continuously watching anime? Yes, I have. I've watched so much anime, I don't know what to do with myself. I'm almost burned out on anime. I watched all of, I watched them. I watch all of them too. It's like, I'm getting there, Winston's mom. I probably will use a file of some sort to file it down. It's not too bad. Wow. Bobby's son. That is more impressive than making all those videos, frankly. Watching all those videos is more impressive than making all those videos. It feels good to be feels really good to be talking to you guys again after kind of withdrawing into a depressive shell of sorts, I guess. Hi, Lauren Cuthbert. I don't have any Adderall or anything. Today's the 27th. So I'll probably get it like on Monday or something. I could call it in on Friday in theory. I would not call it a deep spiral. What's your type? I don't know. I'll be back. I mean, it's like I just gone for a few days. Which type is best at predicting future events? Probably INTJs. Would be my guess. Both INTJs and INFJs are prone to the same mistake, which is placing too much emphasis on motivational calculi. But regardless, if you're saying who's more likely to be right about the future, most likely to be right about the future, it's INTJ. But who's most likely to correctly not make predictions is not INTJ, right? So it's like, you know, the types that are most likely to be correct are also the types that are most likely to be dramatically incorrect. So it's a trade-off, you know. Only some things NI well. Other things don't NI well. Like YouTube doesn't NI well. Or maybe it does. Maybe I'm just really shitty at it. How are you indeed, for instance, Mom? How are you? You're always asking how I am. How are you? Why don't I be a little bit less selfish for a second and ask you how you are doing? It is true. It is about as long as I ever go without YouTube. It's like, oh, my torch. I used to use the torch all the time, but the sparker broke. I'll type you soon. Yeah, I don't have any Adderall right now, so I'm not very enthusiastic about things. And also, I could get some. Like, I'm feeling ready to get some more now. But it takes me... I like to be fully recovered from... I wake up, I have no plans, it gets dark. That's a great description of your life. No, I might even call up one of a couple of connects I have. Actually, I've got like 3 connects now, besides the doctor, which is funny because when you really want drugs, usually you can't find them, and then. Pretty great, actually, when I think about it. I literally have 3 connects besides the doctor for Adderall. I can hook up from 3 different parties. Most hilariously, my clients. Who are happy to motivate me by promising me Adderall. I was like, nah, I'm not feeling it. Well, how about we give you some Adderall? Yeah, all right. I'm making another pot of coffee, by the way, if you're wondering where I went. I should probably let you know where I'm going and what I'm doing at all times so that you don't feel lost in your life. May I just say, MJB is pretty bomb coffee. I like it better than your Eubanks or your Folgers. Of course, if you really want to know the true meaning of Christmas, the answer is Farmer's Brothers coffee. Farmer's Brothers coffee is the kind of coffee they serve in restaurants, like coffee shops and stuff. It's really coffee shoppy flavored, Yeah, nothing pseudo about this socialization, Lauren Cuthbert. You are truly and non-pseudoly socializing right now. So I think I've been running kind of like a low-grade fever for maybe a week or so. I feel better this morning. Like, maybe I'm not right now, I guess. The other thing is, it's hard on Rachel when I withdraw a lot from the world because, my fourth slot withdrawal function, I guess you could say, is SI. But her fourth slot is SE. So I think she needs this as much as I do, really. How would the ISFP and INFJ relationship be if the INFJ was a bit awkward talking to? INFJs being a bit awkward to talk to is suggestive that they might not be INFJs. Typically people think of INFJs as being awkward. They may be a lot of different things, but not really awkward. Someone robbed the country house. Zaylen Black, that none of that is making any sense to me. Am I getting tested? For what? COVID? No, I haven't been tested. I'm not sure what possible good it would do to be tested. Like, I don't know. Let's say it was COVID. I mean, what good is it going to do to get tested? You're going to tell me I got COVID and I have to stay home forever. But I'm pretty sure I know the source of my unwellness. This has happened to me before when I've had like an infected tooth and I just sort of don't deal with it for a long time. Well, I mean, as it is, Lauren Cuthbert, I literally, it's like this morning I went out to get cigarettes, right? I had on a mask. The guy who's selling me cigarettes has on a mask. Plus this like bank glass stuff they put up between the customers and the people everywhere now anyway. So it's like I have almost no interaction with anybody. Yeah, well, I sort of looked at it. It's popular. A lot of people reference it. It doesn't explain anything. That's the problem. It's not an explanatory book that helps you to understand cognitive function. It's yeah. I mean, my behavior is not going to change anyway, Lauren Cuthbert. The fact is, California, Los Angeles County especially, is more locked down than any place in the world, probably. So it's like the chance of anybody giving anybody anything is zero. You have to live in the real world. You can't live just in the world of ideas detached from reality. I know you are FI attached to your COVID position, but then there's reality. Your brain does not work in principles. Your brain definitely does not work in principles. If your brain worked in principles, you'd apply the principle that the onus is on the individual. But you're not applying that principle. There are principles that do apply. You're doing the opposite of applying principles. What reality? Well, for example, the one I articulated, that Los Angeles is more locked down than just about any place in the country or the world. The chance of me contracting or giving anybody COVID is 0. As close to 0 as it possibly be. And additionally, my explanation for why I have a low-grade fever makes much more sense than COVID. I have no symptoms of COVID, except for a low-grade fever, which is not a symptom of COVID. It's a general symptom of unwellness. So reality is a place where your points make some sense in some contexts, and other points make other sense in other contexts, right? And facts have to be included. Facts that we both agree on. We can interpret in different ways. We can have our own interpretations of the facts. We can't have our own facts. Okay? We each have to share facts. Now that's bullshit. So Katie says there is no virus. You're probably reacting to people like that. That's just as bad as what you're doing. That's worse even, right? It's always worse to have somebody wrong on your team than it is to have somebody who's on the other team. Okay, well, so that's not principled thinking, Lauren Cuthbert. That's emotional thinking. That's non-principled thinking. That's not derived from axioms. The only axiom you have there is you don't like the way it makes you feel. Oh. Principles are derived from axioms. What you have are strong, authentic moral indications. Those are not principles. Look, the thing is, here's the fact. TI and FI are generally on the same side. Okay? So Lauren Cuthbert and I both agree that the individual is of paramount importance. We go about expressing that individual prioritization in different ways. Lauren Cuthbert expresses it in ways that functionally are communitarian, which means it's bad public policy. But we're in agreement about what's important. So the explanation as to why is because Lauren Cuthbert is not reaching the conclusions I'm reaching from axioms, but from her own feelings. She's doing an unprincipled approach to morality, and I'm doing a principled approach to morality. Now, both generally are going to agree with each other. In any given specific situation, Lauren Cuthbert and I are going to be on the same side. When I was standing in Pomona and watching this guy get tased, and everyone was standing there silently until I said, stop tasing him. Lauren Cuthbert would have been standing right next to me, shouting it at the same moment, because we would have been on exactly the same page, experientially, regarding the morality of the thing. The problem is Lauren Cuthbert doesn't understand that when you go from experiential morality to policy, you have to take a different approach. And the approach is what matters, not the conclusion. Okay? So it's like Lauren Cuthbert and I both value individual life a great deal. We both value quality of life. We both value sanctity of life. But she doesn't understand that public policy requires a deft mind, not a clear emotional reaction to something. So, could you liken it to people who disagree on abortion because of the fact of what time the embryo becomes a human, not because they disagree with the moral fact of murder? Well, I'd like it. I think what I'd liken it more to is this. Nobody likes abortion, right? Nobody says, let's have more and more abortions because abortions are great. Let's have abortions up until 9 months and all the way until it comes out of the uterus. So everybody agrees that abortion is bad in some sense, right? At some point that it becomes bad. There's nobody who's saying right up until 5 minutes before the woman goes into labor, abortion should be okay. So in that regard, people disagree on not whether or not abortion's a good thing, but whether or not it ought to be legal. And again, that's where it's a matter of policy versus personal feelings. So, in other words, if you say, personally, I don't like abortion, but I think women should have a right to have an abortion, then you're at least attempting to make an appeal to principle there. You're saying, despite my preference, I support other people's rights. Well, we both, FI and TI are both about individual deliberation, that the individual decides for themselves most of all. So Lauren Cuthbert, if you're an ENFP and I'm an ENTP, we both have a deliberation function second, which means we think we can decide best what's true. You know, it's like I can decide for myself what's correct. I don't need to rely on any experts. You, same thing. Except the problem is, we're both wrong about half of life. And the thing is, I'm wrong about the half of life that is personal and intimate and whatever, right? So one of my biggest struggles right now is my own feelings of guilt and bad sonship with my dad. Like I'm not placing him importantly enough, given how important he genuinely is to me. I have trouble with FI in that regard, right? I mean, I have trouble letting what I genuinely value impact my decisions enough. So my perspective on abortion is that you have to view it as one of two things, and according to which way you view it, then you necessarily must support that policy. Either you view it as a person inherently, in which case you oppose abortion inherently, or you view it as property, in which case you must support the notion that the man's permission is required to get an abortion because it's mutually created property, so it's mutually owned. And generally, women don't like that. They don't like the fact that they can't have their cake and eat it too. It's either person or property, and that's it. So that's my position on abortion. Well, what position is that, Eric? Well, it's not a position, is it? It's saying you can't have your cake and eat it too. That's it. You have to explain your reasoning first, and then the conclusion follows from that. It's not the other way around. With ENFPs, it's the other way around. Dan Black, that's a snappy retort there. I appreciate that snappy retort. No, because Freddie Forgiato, regardless of your position on abortion, nobody disputes the fact that once it's born, it's a human being. So then the property issue becomes moot. It's only property until it's born, if you're assuming it's property, or until a certain point, you know. Well, John Kramer, it's not really possible to successfully test people with online tests. It's not really possible to successfully test somebody without actually engaging them. So, you know, to successfully test a person means to ask them questions, hear their responses, follow up on those responses, and figure out what's underneath them. That's how to successfully type somebody. There aren't very many people who can do it, but there are some, you know. And so it's like an ENFP is likely to say about abortion, for example, I hear you, Eric, but my position nevertheless remains the same, that it's a woman's right to an abortion. It's her body, her choice. Now, no, that didn't respond to anything I said. But I bet you that's basically what Lauren Cuthbert would say in response to this. Again, it's totally non-responsive to what I've said. But I bet you that's her position. Spot on, she says, right? So this is why ENFPs and I have such conflict. Because I don't care what her position on abortion is. I don't care about abortion really at all. But I do care a lot that you be able to justify public policy positions. And Lauren Cuthbert is spitting in the face of us all when she says she doesn't need to justify her public policy decisions. And that's exactly what she's saying when she's non-responsive to my points. If she refuses to justify them, then she's just being an authoritarian who's trying to force her feelings onto everybody. Hey, Lauren Cuthbert, that's the truth. That's the truth. No, I'm not pro-choice or pro-life or whatever. I'm pro-reason. And the thing is, of course, there's not an opposite equivalent. I'm not going around telling other people how they should live their personal lives, right? Without justifications, or with justifications for that matter. There's not an equivalent the other way around. This is my problem with the NFPs. They're great with their own personal stuff, as they should be, being FI tool people. And I'm shitty with my own personal stuff. And we each get to experience our own consequences for that. But they're shitty with external public policy stuff, and we all have to suffer from those consequences. That's the problem. That's the problem with FI tool. I made the determinant issue clear. And she says, I don't give a fuck. I said, hey, Lauren Cuthbert, if you ever want me to clean this cup, you better start thinking differently. So basically, Lauren Cuthbert, yes, you're an ENFP. You probably don't need to be typed. It's like, it's funny how people are so stereotypical, right? We are so examples of our type. It's insane. No, you said spot on. I said, I bet you this is Lauren Cuthbert's position, and you said spot on. You agreed with me that it was spot on. But that's fine, Lauren Cuthbert. I bet your cup is just as dirty as mine anyway. Or maybe not. Maybe your third slot TE has helped. I know people are allowed to have different opinions. I'm the biggest proponent of that. I'm a big believer in having different opinions and having discourse resolve those differences to decide who's correct. That's the problem. Being allowed to have different opinions and being allowed to force your unjustified opinion on everybody are different things. You think you're ISFP though because of FI values and NI because you're willful? NI is not willfulness. That must be something you heard from C.S. Joseph. That is incorrect understanding. C.S. Joseph has a particularly poor understanding of intuition because he's NI polar. I've become increasingly accustomed to drinking my coffee black as we've run out of creamer and I haven't made it to the store for a while. Winston's mom, that is a bullshit stereotype of ISFPs, by the way. They're not necessarily artistic at all, really. It's just, this is what I don't like about type descriptions either. Again, it's the same thing. If you tell people this is how Nyas are, well, that's all well and good. But if you're not explaining why I hurt your feelings, I'm sure I did. Now I feel bad. My point is a good point though, right? Shouldn't you have to justify your positions on public policy? It is what you're saying everyone should have to go by. It's like I don't know how to get away from that fact. And this is the thing also, Warren Cuthbert, is I'm a little bit frustrated with myself because I keep telling myself my job in this world is to bridge gaps between people who keep talking past each other. And yet I can't do it myself a lot of times. You know, I can do it with the ENFPs. I can bridge gaps with the ENFPs because we've got NE in common at least. But it's just impossible for me to bridge gaps with the ESFPs, I've determined. They just kind of inherently hate me. Yeah, you did just hit me in my polar. That's true. When people tell me I hurt their feelings, I go, yeah, I probably did. Fuck. I really don't like hurting people's feelings. It's not something I take any pleasure in. I just find myself in a lot of battles. You know, a lot of adversarial shit. Why do you dislike ESFPs? Let me count the ways. Let me count the ways. ESFPs always end up feeling victimized by me. I mean, ESFPs, if me in a room full of ESFPs is like a person at a zoo in the monkey room and all the monkeys are throwing shit at him. That's the best analogy I can think of. They're like a bunch of poo throwing monkeys. Your soul is sad. You have some counterpoints, but I don't want to get into an argument. See, this is the thing. We're not even arguing about anything. My point is, pick a status, property or person, and live with the consequences of it. I'm sure there are plenty of healthy ESFPs who find this channel and leave promptly. Probably. Yeah, I think a healthy ESFP is going to know that they're not. See, boy, I don't know. Weefy is a Sagittarius. I don't know what that is supposed to be like. Rachel knows about that stuff, but I never paid enough attention to remember what it's supposed to be. I'm a Taurus, but I do know that I've been told that I'm much more. ENFPs typically don't stick around for very long, Cuthbert. They don't stick around for very long. because we butt heads. Unfortunately, we do tend to butt heads. I have been told I'm much more like my Gemini moon than I am like my Taurus sun. That about sums up my knowledge of astrology. Well, I went to the weed store the other day and I had this moment of panic because there were heart balloons and pink and red and white shit all over the place, decorations and stuff, you know. I'm like, oh fuck, is it Valentine's Day? I thought I was gonna be in big trouble because all of a sudden Valentine's Day snuck up on me and I had forgotten about it. Years of being in relationships and many years of time and again failing to do things properly for Valentine's Day. I have learned that Valentine's Day is the source of great. What was hella confrontational? What I was saying right there? I mean, I didn't think it was hella confrontational. It was expressive of my genuine frustration. So anyway, buy some sex toys going to be your Valentine's Day? Well, yeah, I'm sure you could find a human sex toy if you looked around a little bit. Are you? Yeah, I mean, it's something I'm passionate about because I am running for president in 2024. I do consider myself correct about public policy matters and an expert on them. I'm a public policy debate coach, and I've studied the things for years and years and years. Consider myself a patriot as well, and a bit of a civics nerd, you might say. All that goes into play with my frustration with the level of discourse about politics that I encounter in the world, and when I find individuals sometimes constitutionally opposed to resolving the issue in one fashion or another with words, I find that very frustrating. Let's say you are against identitarianism. You would then have to be against the kind of rhetoric Tim Pool espoused because he is an identitarian. What's an identitarian? Somebody who's into identity politics? Oh yeah. Well, you know, I've heard that's been a big source of frustration for a lot of single people. That if it's hard to start or maintain a relationship in COVID times, people have different perspectives on it. And by the way, I mean, I'm all in favor of everybody's individual perspectives on COVID as they see fit, you know? So it's like Rachel's mom's really into sort of locking herself up in her house, or various people are, you know, and that's their business, not mine. I don't care what they do. So I'm not trying to bust anybody's chops for taking lots of precautions or whatever. But it does, I hear it makes it difficult to for single people. And it makes me it makes me very grateful that my relationship stuff got all settled down right before all the COVID stuff, you know. You can be an individualist in your words, but identitarian in your meanings. You just have to look behind the veil. I see. And what cues behind the veil would indicate that somebody is identitarian in their meanings? Am I an identitarian in my meanings? I would say no, correct? I'm anti-identitarian if it's about identity politics. I think I know what you're talking about. I think this is the same thing that was being referred to when somebody accused me of dog whistling. I was like, what the fuck is this? Dog whistling. And I explained that it means that I'm secretly nodding to racists or something like that. Of course, that's ridiculous. But I am aware of the fact that some people don't know what to do with my fluidly transracial identity. And I guess that confuses them. But being fluidly transracial doesn't make me any different than anybody else. I'm a real person, Blair. Just like you. If you only read articles that support your views and are constantly railing about people on the other side, you are an identitarian. Okay, that's a fine word. That's a fine word. I call them groupists, but identitarian is fine. I have another poop in me running fox. Let's talk about my poop a little bit. It's important, as always, to talk about. I did poop already once this morning, and I feel better for having pooped. But I think I've got another poop coming. I feel like it's brewing right now. I need another cup of black coffee. Legends Fall, how are your poops coming today? Everybody pooping okay? Let's all chime in about our regularity. SE Demon. Is that 8th slot? And its effects. Well, I mean, you got to remember that SI 4th makes me want to talk about poops instead. I do need more coffee. Even though I drink it constantly. I need even more. Even more constant coffee. I mean, the thing about SE 8th is it shuts down when you're not in hero mode, right? If you want to use those metaphors, hero and demon, I wouldn't call it. I wouldn't call it. I think demon is a bad name for your 8th thought function. It's a misleading name. Hero is not necessarily a misleading name for your dominant, but I think demon's a misleading name because it like if I'm not feeling great or things aren't going great, I retreat into my SI, whether it's because I'm having sleepy week or whether it's because my tooth hurts. I'm going to retreat into SI. The SE is just going to shut off completely. Now, this can potentially be a problem between me and Rachel because, of course, she needs SE when she's feeling down, and what she's getting is just more NI. For me, NI is a form of SI almost because like watching anime is an NI thing largely, as I'm receiving a lot of NI knowledge about it as I'm going through and stuff, you know. Sir Thomas says, what would happen if an ENTP if they never get in touch with their SI and disregard it? Can they still get by in a healthy way? Well, I mean, it's kind of like what every ENTP struggles with until they get older, and then they start to become. It's like, okay, my take on it is this: young ENTPs will make the following mistake once or twice before they learn to not make it anymore. They're going to go on a big hike, not eat anything before they go. Halfway through, they're going to be starving, feel like they're going to die, have to turn around and go back. And then probably they won't repeat that mistake again. In other words, next time they go hiking, they'll probably eat something first. We learn to make smaller SI mistakes as we get older. But there's an inherent quality of being an ENTP that says, avoid SI as much as you can. But as long as you're comfortable. As soon as discomfort hits, it's like SI because I can't stand discomfort. Did Megan Lavoda make a video about how ENFJs struggle in relationships because they're too perfect for relationships? That's funny. Is Megan not with that lady anymore? Did they break up? I saw a picture. Rachel showed me a picture of her and her girlfriend in a tube or something like that. Speaking, but I wanted to go back and address something somebody said earlier, which is I'm glad I'm not stuck in an unhealthy relationship with a partner sharing a house right now. Me too. This is the thing that's weird and great is that I can't imagine an easier person to be locked down with than Rachel. You don't get the anime and NI part. Well, look, when you're watching something, you're in receive mode. So that is to say, you're not putting information generally, although you might do so on the internal metaphysical field as you're watching. You might make notes to yourself, so to speak. What was I saying? Oh yeah, receiving. So you're receiving shit, right? How you're receiving it depends on sort of how you pay attention. I appreciate watching anime because I receive it as FI. I kind of feel along with the characters, put myself in their shoes, and have emotional feelings, and I know universally what these archetypes are, and they resonate with previous archetypes, previous examples I've experienced these archetypes before SI. So it's like when you're in a receive mode, you're using your epistemology functions, your judgment functions, and your knowledge functions. For me, those are absolute values, NI and FIR, and instrumental values, TI and SI. Except SI as an instrumental value is, in certain circumstances, very appealing to me. And TI isn't used much, which is a tool function. I don't use it much when I'm watching anime. So it's mostly I'm just receiving information on knowing about it universally and feeling it experientially. And that's gratifying to me. So I end up watching a lot of it. I mean, a shit ton of it. You wouldn't believe the amount of anime I've watched. The last month or so, or 2 months, I don't know how long I've since I've had Crunchyroll. I have gone through all of the series they have that are excellent. for sure. And it's like now I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel. I've watched all of World Trigger. I've watched all of. I just finished watching all of Demon Hunter. I watched all of Overlord. I've watched all of. I've been reincarnated as a slime. I've watched all 3 episodes of So I'm a Spider, So What? Okay, I have not watched. Okay, I've watched the new one from Inuyasha. They have a new one with the girls in it, and I agree, David Sanderson, with your assessment of the coming 4 years. I can't find Cowboy Bebop for a reasonable price, but I hear you, Running Fox. It's something I want to watch. There's a couple of things I can't get that I'd like to see. But I've watched all of Black Clover, which is a lot of episodes of it. I'm up to date with it. I'm up to date with Dr. Stone. Like basically with of course with Attack on Titan. Attack on Titan is so good. It's shockingly good. I gotta say, Attack on Titan. And what's your prediction? I forgot. All right, so Neon Evangelion Genesis, Full Metal Alchemist. There's 2 that I've heard a lot about that that I haven't watched yet. That's Bleach and Full Metal Alchemist. I haven't watched either of those yet. Neon Evangelion Genesis, I think they don't have it on Crunchyroll, if I remember correctly. How do we know if we see the same colors? Well, we actually know in part because of that interesting dress, where if people do see it as different colors, it's quite shocking. If you look at the biology of the eye, then there's good reason to believe that that my experience of green and your experience of green are equivalent. But as to whether we can definitively prove that, not yet. Do you ever watch Samurai Champloo? No, I've never seen that one. I mean, there are some terrible animes on there too. The thing is, you can generally trust the stars. The stars are pretty good. So it's like something that's got close to 5 stars, over 4 stars, is generally going to be pretty good. And if it doesn't have that, then it's going to be pretty bad. So Winston's mom links to an article here that says, your color red really could be my blue. Well, it's possible, but I would say that, I mean, the thing about this is interesting is if you look at different subjective experiential moments of attention, why is it that we don't feel this way about sadness? So if I have if I have an experience of sadness and I express to you that I'm sad, we don't presume that sad for me is different than sad for you. And part of the reason for this is because the physical cues of sadness are the same. In other words, there are reference points that are existent on external fields that we can attend to as objective data. So the difference between objective and subjective data is, of course, is it data that all parties can reference, or is it data just one party can reference? The thing about color is it's comprised of subjective data, and there's no thought experiment we can easily come up with that generates an objective correlate that we can reliably point to in the same way that sadness has an objective correlate. So it's really about the quality of the data more than anything else. We know already that there exists plenty of examples of subjective data, but most of those also express in some fashion objectively, that is to say externally, where everyone can reference some aspect of it. In the same way that tears are visible, so too is when you touch something hot, right? So those moments of objective data give us less reason to ask the question, is your hot, am I cold? But we have more reason to believe that the equivalency of other instances of subjective data would apply consistently than we do to think that there'd be an inconsistent anomaly just on the issue of color, simply because we lack the equivalency in objective data points. I think that's the best answer to the question. And if I do say so myself, I think I did a damn good job of answering it. Well, that's the point, Legends Fall, is unlike other things like hot or cold, we don't have the objective data to determine the status of color itself as objectively determinate. Because to say that color is objective means we have objective data points to reference to determine that color is equivalent for all people. We don't, I'm not saying we have those, right? The important thing to remember is always the following. We communicate via language, and we should never mistake language for doing or being something that it can't or isn't. And that's where a lot of people have problems. Is all we're doing here is reasonably assigning statuses that are consistent with other statuses for good justifications. And as long as we remember that, then we use the tool appropriately. No, the data, look, Legends Fall, no, that's wrong. But I appreciate you saying this, and this is important to clarify why this is wrong. Legends Fall says, our eyes give us objective data of the external world color. However, what we do with it is subjective, like or dislike. No, the reference point that renders data objective or subjective is whether or not other people can access it equally. So your experience of color, there's no way for anybody to access it except for you. And it doesn't have a form that's non-experiential except for the linguistic expression of it. Okay, so it's important not to mistake when we say objective data. It's not a quality of the data per se. It's the fact that different agents can access it equivalently. And it's important to remember that distinction, because otherwise we'll mistakenly think that stuff outside of us, we're going to personify it in ways that we shouldn't, basically. And then we'll make reification fallacies. So the paying attention to something is there's two meanings of the word objective. I can pay attention to something using an objective or disinterested calculus, which means, like, when I'm paying attention to the abortion question by saying, well, it's either this or this, and you deal with the consequences accordingly. That's using a disinterested calculus. I don't care, right? Lauren Cuthbert is using an interested calculus when saying she knows what her position is on it, and she just hasn't come up with the arguments yet to explain why she's right. That's using an interested calculus. So in that regard, I'm being objective about the matter, and she's being subjective about the matter. We use the term like that, okay? But when we're referring to data, we use it in a different way, and it means something different. If I say data is objective, it means you can access it equally well to me. In other words, the data is external to both of us. Color, unfortunately, is experientially something each person takes away from data, external, but is not something that has a triangulation point that's clearly relevant, that's clearly referent, clearly able to be established. Without that triangulation point, there's no means to determine whether we're, in fact, making a disinterested calculus about the status of the color of the thing. Only some data is objective. Only some data is objective. If I tell you we should do this because I'm sad, I'm not going to receive a lot of pushback on whether or not I'm sad, right? After all, when it comes down to it, I say, listen, who knows better whether I'm sad, you or me? And then it comes to, well, I say you're lying. And I say, well, I say I'm not. That's it, right? It's subjective data. One person has an advantageous access to the data over other people. You can't look inside of me and see my feelings. I can make claims about them regardless. On the other hand, if I tell you this is a tree, well, you can accuse me of lying because the external reference point, the data that we can reference, its shape, its identity that we know from NI that it's a lighter, those things falsify my claim. Those things are data points that we can all reference independently. Yeah, people will accept that you're sad as authentic and want to comfort you unless they're assholes. You're not sad. Don't be a crybaby. Yeah, we know from NI this is a lighter. So there's kind of like a machine code level of effectiveness in every function that everybody has. In other words, if NI polar really meant you were blind to it, I'd go, what's this? You'd say a lighter. And I'd go, what's this? You'd say an oval. You'd be confused. But we all have basic child level, newborn level, equivalent. For example, there's a time when in very early childhood when you don't have object permanence yet. Object permanence is a thing that if you cover a baby's eyes and then you take your hands away from them and they see the thing again, then they go, ha, 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 where did that thing come from? Right? It was gone a second ago. Now it's back. It's gone. Now it's back. Oh, my God. This thing is appearing and reappearing. It's a miracle. When you can still play peekaboo with a baby and they're amused by it, they don't yet have object permanence. When they learn object permanence, they are learning that their experience of something is reliable as a data point. In other words, my teddy bear is here where I left it. When I come back, it's still going to be here. Okay, that's sort of proto-SI. It's saying my experience of where it is reliable as an indicator of where it will be later. The other equivalent to that in childhood is shape constancy. That's the other proto-knowing. And that's, learning that this, no matter what angle you look at it, it has the same identity. Its identity doesn't change despite the fact that your experience of it changes. So these are two different kinds of knowing, and we can see lots of nice consistency points. Lauren Cuthbert, you know what? Cheers. First of all, let me say, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for being so attacky. And I feel bad for hurting your feelings. I do. Because I want to be friends and not an asshole. What's the defining characteristic of the polar? Well, it's that it only operates as a real-time experience. I guess it could be. It could be. That's how it is for me. So I have to be careful extrapolating here because I've got a deliberation function that's polar. For me, Fi as a deliberation function only happens as a real-time experience. I never can sort of learn anything from it really, unless it's a very, very basic level kind of learning. For example, it took me a while to realize that fishing at this lake made me feel bad, too bad to go fishing anymore because I kept catching turtles and it made my feelings hurt. And then one time we had a living tree in here, a Christmas tree in here, and we pulled a tarot card for it, and it showed that the tree was suffering, and I had this horrible feeling of being an awful person, and I rushed outside and I planted it in the ground. It's still fine. It lives right there now. That's Fi polar. I had no idea really that I was feeling things about the tree until somebody triggered it. It's like, being Fi polar means you're subject to supersaturation. You can have a lot of emotions that are completely dissolved into the liquid, and then one little grain drop in, and it all comes like that, If you're familiar with that idea of supersaturation. Hobbs Brew. You hope I'm having a wonderful day. Well, thank you. I hope you're having a wonderful day as well. I am having a fine day. I cry every day too, Lauren Cuthbert. I cry. I'm a very cryy person. I cry all the time when I'm watching stuff, right? Like I'm a TV show maker's dream audience guy. That's a good question, Freddie Forgiato. Probably. But again, like, I don't know what it would be like to experience a bunch of inconsistencies in real time. So, because FI seems to me, it's a difficult one for me to see how it applies. It would probably play out differently depending on what kind of function, you know? Because I've got FI, which in its most natural sense is a real-time experiential function. So the fact that I experience it only in an experiential real-time way doesn't necessarily mean that's how all functions play out in the polar, you know? It could be that it plays out differently for TI, it plays out differently for different functions. I just don't know. It's a good question. You get overwhelmed by information really fast. Is that the equivalent? I mean, Lauren Cuthbert, I would guess that one thing that I would expect an ENFP to agree with is that they absolutely despise having to parse through legal language, and they will delegate that to somebody else every time if they can. So if there's some sort of contract and you're not sure what it means or whatever, ENFPs will be like, that's just not for me to do. Somebody else do this. They having to use specific words for something. Oh. That really just says it all right there. So it's like you could describe ESFPs as, I hate the fact that words have meaning, and ENFPs as, I hate having to use specific words for things. I don't like the constraints of meaning. I love words, but I don't like the constraints of meaning. Oh, that's funny. A tree or a big boy plant, either works. I agree. That's such a brilliant. It just shows you, you don't need TI for NE to be brilliant. That is so brilliant. A tree or a big boy plant, either works. That's the best. That's like an ENFP lawyer standing for the ENFP team and going like, bam. It's good stuff, because without that being the case, there's no fun in the world, right? It's a good point. I also ultimately value NE more than I value TI, because TI is just my tool function. The thing is, I only get really fussy about it when we're talking public policy or philosophy or something, because it's like, stop. It's like, it's like you're a chef in a kitchen and you're making something, right? And then somebody goes in and goes, oh, I like to cook too. And then they just start throwing pepper and all your shit. And you're just like, no. What are you doing? Well, the point is, greetings, wisdom. Language can be used for fun, or it can be used to parse shit, right? As an ENTP, I have a tendency to overuse the parsing side of it, although I am personally an ENTP who does a lot of intuition stuff that's non-parsing as well. So I'm the chef and those people are fucking in my kitchen. That's right. Thank you. You have way too many Save the Earth shirts. Laura Cuthbert, do you have a shirt that says vegan AF? Eric, what would you say are any potential difficulties and strengths of typing people as ENTP in person? I mean, typing other ENTPs? The biggest risk I have in typing fellow ENTPs is mistaking them as INTPs. Because ENTPs go full blast TI when they are being tested on TI and will test sometimes as TI DOMs. Because they're trying their best to show off, you know. But like I thought Isaiah Rude was an INTP at first, but he's not. You were really making a shirt that says vegan AF? Yeah, that's my stereotypical joke about what a difference between ENFP and ENTP shirts, right? ENFP, there's two shirts I saw when I went on vacation in Hawaii with Rachel. One, obviously ENFP, I was walking a shirt with a shirt that said vegan AF. And another guy, either an ENTP or an INTP, had a shirt on that said, what's his name? Gigi Allen. Gigi Allen was right. Yeah. So, like, that's the difference, right? That's the difference between ENFPs and ENTPs right there. It's one of them. Bye, Zaylen Black. See you later. Don't forget to eat plenty of cheese today, all right? Yeah, it's not spelled G-I-G-I, though. So, I don't know. ENTPs are very concerned about being cool, is the other thing. And ENFPs are more concerned about being authentic, expressing themselves. You know, ENTPs are naturally dandies. We got a lot of hey doing to us, and we want to borrow a little bit of the razzle dazzle of the ESTP, I guess, without all the fighting and hollering. Razzmatazz. Yeah. You know, how many of you feel as though you could use more razzmatazz in your life? Like the drama-free live stream. Well, you know, Lauren Cuthbert and I today are bridging the gap. We're reaching our hands out. We're shaking hands in the middle of the bridge and saying, we can find common ground on NE and FI and FE stuff. And we don't need to argue and bicker about who killed whom. I feel undervalued due to FE polar. Is that a big thing these days with others, or am I going crazy? Well, Kane, FE polar is inherently going to cause you some occasional social stumbles. But remember, there's a lot of people in the world who don't value FE. So it's like, Cameron and my dad, they really hit it off well. He's FE polar. My dad's an ESTJ. He's FE 8th. So it's like, it's not so much that FE makes a person not so likable or whatever, but it's just that some people place more importance on that stuff than others. Rachel and I are so FE, we have trouble sleeping together. Because we're too aware of how our rolling around and stuff impacts the other person's sleep. So we can't really relax completely and sleep. FE 2 and 3 makes for, potentially anyway, at least in this instance it does, a very peaceable relationship. But both people want to avoid the FE stick and use FE carrot, then it's like there's just zero. Rachel and I have no conflict. It's crazy how little conflict we have. No, that's not like a waddle coop, obviously. Waddle coop's different. Cam Moto is, it's because his channel is about things like scooters and other things with little motors on them and stuff. He does things like compare this kind of scooter against that kind of scooter and stuff like that. He also talks about that stuff quite a bit. So I feel fairly knowledgeable about scooters. I enjoy listening to him talk about it, though. It's a nice kind of SITE deferral, like I don't have to do the SITE. When you see Cam Moto, you just read it as camel toe. No, they don't run afoul of each other. Cameron is really nice. He's a really, really good guy. And it's like the kind of things he's actually, I'll have a tendency to ride off ahead on the bicycle or scooter while he is patiently riding with Rachel. So, he comes over here prepared for our lack of TE. What I mean by that is he's such an INFJ. That's really interesting here. I'm glad you told me that. That dude is such an INFJ. Gavin Leather is so FE, he paralyzed himself with women and was awkward and had anxiety even after being famous for a long time. Yeah, I have a very basic Enneagram test that I give people. I just ask them, how do you deal with shame? Do you help? Do you try to achieve on, like have a cool car and cool stuff? Or do you say, fuck you all, I'm going home? And then my second question is, how do you deal with fear? Do you try to learn everything about it and sort of outsmart it? Do you retreat to your nest and build up your defenses, or do you bury your head in the sand and fiddle while Rome burns? And then the third question I ask is, how do you deal with anger? Do you pow back? Do you go, hey, okay, hey, no? Do you appease, or do you go, I disagree, okay, that's it, I've had enough, and then you leave? In other words, do you confront, withdraw, or avoid in each of those three situations? And then the tri-type I determined is based on how easy it is for them to answer the question. So like the one that they answer right away and go, oh, that's this one. That's their first one. The one they go, oh, it's this one. That's their second one. The one they go, oh, I don't know. It could be either this one or this one, or I don't know. That's their third one. That's how I do it. It's just that. That's my Enneagram test. So I don't think a lot about Enneagram. I like it. I think it's a nice, useful taxonomy, and that's. I hate all those sappy love songs where the guy is simping out all over the song. I know that shit is made by FPs for sure. Like the ones with lyrics like "My entire world is over if you leave me, baby." I mean, that what I'm saying to ourselves is what I just said. Do that thing that I just said. Ask those questions of yourself. Write down the answers. Add them together, then divide it by 4. And then you'll get your tri-type. Well, I gotta say, this thing that I just finished reading called The Poet X. All right, let me see if I can find it. Here it is. I just finished reading this book, okay? For work. And it's pretty good, actually. Now, the thing is, as soon as you see this, you go like, gaff, so gaff, oh my God, so gaff, how can I possibly read this book? It's actually pretty good. Well, yeah, we just finished it though. It's kind of embarrassing to work with a student because it's got like sex scenes and stuff. It's a coming of age story of a Dominican Republic girl living in New York and her very Catholic family trying to constrain her in this fashion, school and peers constraining her in this fashion, and her having only one outlet for expression, namely her writing. And, her decision making, it's written for teenagers, it's like whether or not to have sex with her boyfriend, whether or not she should smoke weed, drink alcohol, and stuff like that. And the thing is, it's a pretty good short novel, basically, but they've got it formatted as poetry, and I actually think it works pretty well as an approach, surprisingly. But the thing about this is, it's like, well, the teacher ruined it for me with her bullshit assignments that she has her students do, But I don't know. Is this something it's like, with whom does this book resonate? Lots of people, but none of the kids at the school where my student goes, right? He goes to Poly. Poly is this really expensive prep school, right? None of the kids at Poly identify with this character at all. So why assign this book? Well, it's just one of those diversity things, My kid, both his parents play in the LA Philharmonic. That's the kind of people who go to Poly. Not Cal Poly. Pasadena Polytechnic. It's a high school. I'm steeped in the world of high schools and middle schools and stuff. So my shorthand doesn't refer to university usually. I think Enneagram and cognitive functions basically cover everything. There's not really any aspect of human endeavor that you can't explain with those two things. I think I've had too much coffee. I'm feeling, yeah, sure, gender. Sexuality. This face says sexuality. Are you turned on? Running Fox is leaving. Running Fox. That was my sexiest face. I'm teaching people how to be sexy, Art McAllister. Try plow. Remember, the first step in being sexy is being coquettish. Okay? Being coquettish. So, to be coquettish, you have to be like this. You have to constantly be hiding because you're a little bit shy. I'm coquettish. And then you work your way up. More coy. Okay, you begin with coy. No, you begin with coy. Byron Fox. Begin with coy. You go to coquettish. And then you get all the way up to sexy. Like that. Coy is the predecessor to coquettish. It's the prerequisites. You have to accomplish coy before you can get to coquettish. You know, the first step was locate genitals. You have to get a genital detector to do that. It beeps more when you get closer to it. Beep, 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 beep. Guess the catchphrase would be a good NE game. In any game, Lauren Cuthbert is inky pinky. So, like, Koi Boy is an inky pink, is an ink pink. Or Mountain Fountain is an inky pinky. So, etc. Making a pretense of shyness or modesty that is intended to be alluring. Yes. And you can see how alluring it was when I was doing that, right? Yeah, so anywho, I guess I'm gonna wrap it up, but I'll probably be back later for another exciting live stream. Digital locator would be a good device and a challenging profession. Probably not that challenging.